Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio at Root Sheva. The show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. We've got a great show today. Frequent guest of the program from somozal.com, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi Katz, how you doing out there?
Hi, Ari. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and all your listeners.
Absolutely. One of the things that's very interesting about you coming on the program is I am in Jerusalem recording this, and you're in Sfat. So I want to know a little bit about the history of Sfat. That's where Kabbalah, as we know it, originates from. So let's start with some of the history of Kabbalah there.
Well, it's as good a time now as any. Hanukkah's coming up this week, and for any Israel enthusiast, Sfat enthusiast, I would say the only hot spot on the planet, or in Israel at least, for Hanukkah is Sfat. That might sound as a shock with the whole Jerusalem thing, but it's a famous thing that the Sfat misty, cold, rainy alleyways, and the cold weather here has always served the yeshiva visiting communities and seminaries as the mystical kind of experience that comes with Hanukkah and Sfat. So this is the time to talk about those kind of things.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the original Kabbalah, if you will, the two main schools, the Zohar, the Arizal. Tell us a bit about those different trains of thought.
So the Kabbalah, as we know, is a very, maybe not so much controversial topic, but topical topic. Everybody has an opinion. There's kosher Kabbalah, non-kosher Kabbalah, Madonna to the mystical rabbi. The basic timeline of Kabbalah, and making it kind of a kosher word, is where some people want to say the whole Egyptian thing and ancient Israelites or whatever you want to call it, but in terms of textual analysis, without any kind of political agenda or any other kind of agenda, it goes back to the Zohar, which was written approximately 2,000 years ago by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. If you've heard of the Lag BaOmer holiday, when does it come out? Like May-ish, in the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, between Passover and Shavuot. You have the fire lit. What do they call the bond?
A bonfire.
Bonfire.
Yeah.
Right? The whole mountain they light up on fire, contained fire, obviously. About hundreds of thousands of people will come. So that's celebrating Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So that was written again 2,000 years ago. You're going to have it underground, hidden in contained communities for about 1,200 years, give or take. About the year 1200 it came out, I believe. That was edited by Rabbi Moses de Leon. The nice conspiracy theorists will say that he wrote it himself and made a conspiracy. The purists will say he merely edited it and made it able for good publishing. That's going to be circulating around the time of the Rishonim, call it Rambam, Rashi, although Rambam we say didn't have it, but that era of rabbi. Come into the 1500s. You're going to come to a little hilltop city in Israel called Sfat. In Sfat, you're going to have a renaissance of sorts. The Shulchan Aruch, the body of law, like the authoritative body of law, is written here, and the Kabbalah is going to thrive and become manifest as well. The Arizal is going to expand everything in Kabbalah, which is known as the Lurianic Kabbalah system. A rabbi by the name of the Ramak, he wrote a commentary on the Zohar, maybe one of the biggest ever, and a handful of other super famous Mukubalim that all flourished in Sfat around the same time. But again, it was the Arizal and his student Chaim Vital that put together the work called the Kitvei Ari, the writings of the Arizal, which was highlighted by two books that resonate the most to me as a resident and a scholar in Sfat. Shar Gogulim, the book on the authority of reincarnation, and obviously the Etz Chaim, the book of life, the tree of life, which is the magnum opus of the Arizal and his Kabbalah.
Okay, let's talk about reincarnation for a bit, because I've met one or two quote-unquote Orthodox Jews that for whatever reason don't really believe in that, and I want you to explain to our audience that yes, reincarnation is a fundamental part of Judaism. It is not something that's exclusive to Hindus or Indian religions. It's a part of the Torah, part of Judaism. Can you explain a little bit more about that for our audience?
Right. And in that sphere, there's two kinds of Jews. The Rambam is it, the Rambam is not it. There is reincarnation. There is not reincarnation. The Zohar is real.
Nice and
Zohar is
simple.
forgery. Right? And this is the discussion. Like you know who you're talking to. If you meet a guy and says, there's no such thing as reincarnation. Okay, so tell me about the Rambam. Tell me about how the Zohar is fake. I mean, you know where they stand, right? And so the idea that the other view, you call it the purist view, will have read the Rizal's Shar Hogogulim, the book of reincarnation, and there's a lot of other, primarily Sephardim, that the Sephardi rabbinic movement in the 1700s and such like that. They wrote a lot on Gilgulim. So along that school of thought, it exists, but it doesn't exist the way that the naysayers are rejecting. If they knew that, they wouldn't reject. And the way that, let's say, the non-Jewish religions portray reincarnation, right? That, you got this guy died last week, and this guy's new grandson is Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob came back. Right? So it's not that. The way the Rizal describes it is there, a famous teaching in Kabbalah and Chassidus is there's at least, 5 types of soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. 5 different types or levels of one person's soul. Now, in reincarnation, the way that God is the master of the creation, he uses the levels of soul to create his world. So he might take the Ruach of this guy and merge it with the Nefesh of this guy. And in Hebrew, you call it a cheshbonot, registration. God puts together the package. If he needs to take, for example, as the writings of the Rizal state in a paraphrased fashion, the Ruach of Moshe, the Chaya of, in English you would say Enoch or Chanoch, the Neshama of Cain, the Chaya of Aaron the Cohen, and the Yechida ben Yahu ben Yehuyada. You'd say, what? But yeah, that's how it works. It's kind of a cocktail that Hashem uses basically to get the job done. And we all have levels of soul that can be used. Now that's only one aspect. There are many aspects of reincarnation, but that's the most obvious and prominent in the works of the Rizal and reincarnation.
Again, we're speaking with Rabbi David Katz here on Isn't Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. The show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. Rabbi, you were talking about some of the reason why Jews may not believe in reincarnation is because they think it is non-Jewish. What are some of the other reasons? Talk a little bit more about why, for some reason, it is not in the mainstream as it needs to be.
The simple answer is the simple answer, and that's because the writings of the Rizal, in my opinion, I've conquered a lot of texts in my time. I would say that the Rizal's text is the hardest to conquer. He is not writing anything literary whatsoever. You read, I'm reading now in my spare time a sefer called Chesed LaAvraham. It was written in around 1700-ish. It's beautiful. It's a nice, well-written book, kind of a sentence structure. You know what he's saying, words you can understand. It's nice. Even in the Zohar, I would say when the Sulam commentary translated from Aramaic to Hebrew, even that is a very easy book to read. Very easy to put it together and know what he's talking about. The Arizal is super easy in the words. And that is the problem. You can know exactly what he's saying, but imagine. I'll tell you. Here's the exact. This is beautiful. This is the Arizal. He is the movie trailer to the new Star Wars film that just came out. Right? You watch it, you say, yes, of course it's the light side of the Force and the dark and the new Stormtrooper. I get it. I love it. I get it. I love the movie already. And we're going to go watch it next December. And we're going to be like, this has nothing to do with that 30-second trailer whatsoever. Like nothing. He rewrote the entire Star Wars universe, whatever it is he does. So that's the Arizal. You read it in a little tiny trailer fashion, because you edited out 90% of the material, and it comes together in a high-action Torah discourse. And that's the thing. That's not the truth. You're expected to have known the movie and to know which edit spots went into the movie or in the trailer. And that's why no one's getting it. It comes across as a full movie already done. You don't realize how much is edited out, and that you have to understand to go back in and make it make full sense.
All right, now let's talk about a concept that I've heard growing up for a long time, and I've heard it's disputed if it's actually true, but my understanding is that a person to learn Kabbalah is supposed to be a minimum of 40 years old. He's supposed to master all the texts. He's supposed to be financially stable where he doesn't have to worry about money, X, Y, and Z. There are conditions. Is that actually true that a person has to fulfill those conditions to learn Kabbalah?
How old was the Arizal before he died?
My guess was under 40.
Under 40.
Yeah.
How old was the Ramchal before he died?
Also under 40.
Under 40.
Yeah.
So, there is something to it. And, first of all, it's a minhag, it's a custom. That's number one. Number two, by that definition, it's not a halacha. Number three, that per force, then, it's not a mitzvah, what you're saying, or what you're quoting. Number, whatever we're on. The point, I'll explain it as I understand it best. I think I have a grasp on it. When they say you should be 40 to learn Kabbalah, the highest level and brought down in all Torah literature, on any level of Torah, is you should learn in order to teach. And I think that's what we're talking about. I think that's what they mean. Again, a lot of these things, the meat and potatoes is edited out, and you're supposed to know what those meat and potatoes are. In the Talmudic yeshivas, that's called learning pshat, or chapim pshat, which a lot of people don't chap pshat. They kind of just give over, again, the edit material and expect that to make sense. And I'll explain why I think this is the answer. Learning Kabbalah, there's really nothing to it in terms of a fear or whatever. But when you're going to teach Kabbalah, you have to live by the name of the book. The book is called the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is the Tree of Life. And I'm 36 years old. I have 2 kids. And let me tell you, I started learning the Arizal, being a citizen of Sfat, when I was 23, 24. I just wrote a book on the Ger with my Chavrusa, my learning partner, and he was actually the one that got me into learning this when I was in yeshiva. He's now 75-ish. Sorry if I got that wrong. He's in his 70s, so he had the prerequisite years, per force. The point is that what I may have known when I was even 25, 26, and been learning for a couple of years, at that point, I was way, way, way not prepared to teach Kabbalah. And, only through, even when I got married and had my kids, only then did I even begin to really claim to even see anything. And now as I'm inching towards 40, I can tell you straight up, I might teach Kabbalah in my classes, even though not by, that's my thrust. It's not my thrust. I teach regular Torah. I mean, I can answer Kabbalah stuff or, give a shmooze about it. But, to stand up and say I am a Kabbalah authority, I'm not going to. Because I know for a fact, and from learning the Psalms in depth, Moses was credited as writing one of the Psalms, and he says, until you're 40, you've just had one big PTSD experiment. That's all youth is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Point is that when you hit 40, you change. You've lived enough of life that you're going to see things different. And I think what we should do is you should learn Kabbalah from whenever you're ready and have enough Torah in you to make it make sense. But understand you are a student until you hit 40. And then you remain a student, but maybe now you have the chutzpah to teach it. But your mind, a 40-year-old man's mind, I'm not 40 yet, so I'm only speaking theoretically. But based on what the Torah teaches, what I've seen from, let's say, even 35 to 36, because they describe the time period between 35 and 40. What I'm seeing now is existentially greater than I ever saw when I would have assumed that I would have been ready.
Okay, let's talk real quick about the minhag. I just want to clear that up because you were saying that it is only a minhag, but we have to take a minhag if it's Klal Yisrael seriously, but you're saying that the minhag is on teaching, not learning.
Yeah, I think, too many times people want to parrot what they read. They say like they would go around now saying they saw the new Star Wars film. They didn't. You saw a 30-second trailer. So when you see in the Talmud, all is often, if not always, taken out of context. I mean, again, to bring up my work of the non-Jew, it serves a great purpose. How many times do we see in the Torah the word ger written down? And 10 times out of 10, they'll say it's a convert. And you say, okay, it's a convert. So tell me about Dvarim, chapter 14, verse 21, I believe it is, about give the carcass to the ger. Are you going to give a carcass, non-kosher meat, to a converted Jew? So you're not going to do that. Therefore, what you read is true. You give it to the ger, but you assume you know what ger is. Stop assuming that. You don't know unless you look it up. And this is what I'm saying, is that too many times we assume we know exactly what is said. And just because you read it doesn't make it true until you research it out. And then when you find out what it really means, then you know. But the pitfall is we assume we know because you don't assume that your level of intelligence is that low on that point. But that's not an insult. This is why the Torah exists, to teach you things that you thought you knew and to clarify and make you greater in your revelation.
Again, you're listening to Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. The show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube, and you can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. That would be the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, the famous thing with the celebrities and Madonna and the red strain and the whole thing. Tell us a bit about what exactly that is and how it originated.
So I'm not into their exact curriculum, but knowing, hearing enough through the grapevine and having what do you call it, the privilege or disprivilege, whatever, unprivileged, whatever it is, they have Berg buried in our cemetery here. Yeah, there's a whole. I haven't been there, 'cause I'm a Cohen, so I can't go in. But I guess they built like a structure with a guard, and I don't know. But when they buried him, there was the whole A-lister gang was here to do that. So it's fought. You hear through the grapevine what's going on. What it is that they translated the Zohar into I guess a workable English. So they're gonna learn a lot of Zohar. I've heard the English is not so bad that they've come up with, but I've had people on Facebook asking, if this is kosher or what this means, and I've seen this with my own eyes. They edit out material that they don't think that you should know. That already is a massive red flag. Right? If I don't throw around the words Chilul Hashem too often. I'm not a fire and brimstone kind of authority. But when you start editing material and telling me what I should learn, and that you make decisions for my learning, I get offended. A lot of times the Kabbalistic works, let's say of the Ramban. Ramban is a classic Rishon rabbi. Everyone learns him. He's as kosher as Rashi and as common as Rashi, but he does use Kabbalistic terms from time to time. A lot of the commentaries will edit that out and not tell you that they edited it out. I'm saying that's none of your business. You don't have the right to do that. So when the Kabbalah Center is doing that, that tells me there's an agenda, and already if you have an agenda in this, there's something not right.
All right, now, I know we have a huge audience that is not Jewish, but as I say all the time on the show, we're going to tell things like it is and tell the truth. It is my understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that Kabbalah is not supposed to be taught to non-Jews. If that's so, that, again, would be a major issue with the Kabbalah Center because, as far as I know, Madonna's not Jewish. A lot of these celebrities are Jewish. There's some that are. But the whole story I heard is that Rabbi Berg was not allowed to do that, and then someone came to him in a dream, told him to do it, and he made that story up, whatever. But let's start with the first question of, is Kabbalah allowed to be taught to non-Jews?
That's kind of funny you say. I had a dream on Shabbos. The Baba Sali came to me and said that Rabbeinu Berg. Just kidding.
No, that dream didn't happen, by the way, folks. He's making a joke. Just saying. Don't get crazy.
But the thing is, I hate to say this, but that is kind of a party line. I was shocked to find this out. In my work, I'm also on that hunt also to know if it's true. And it turns out, again, the book I told you that I'm learning in my spare time, the Chesed LaAvraham, which again, he is a classic mainstream Mekubal in the tradition of mainstream Kabbalah. And he maintains that the Zohar's printing and editing and coming to the world when it did is an end of days endeavor, and that endeavor is meant for the non-Jews to learn Kabbalah. He says it in there. Now, what it does say is that there was I don't know how to say it in English so well, a takana, I guess, how do you say it, like a decree.
Yeah, decree, yeah.
That for a long time, Kabbalah was not to be taught to not only the masses, but to the non-Jew. When the Zohar came out, the Chesed Abraham says that the decree was nullified, and that the time had come due to where we are in history, the 6th millennium, the 5,000 years of Jewish history, which now we're in 5775. But more importantly, and again, in my work, I think it can explain it with a little more clarity. Any forbidden anything with the non-Jew is always geared towards the Akum. Akum is an abbreviation for those that worship the stars, i.e. idolatry. Once you remove Akum, which I would assume the Zohar knew that in the end of days the Akum will be gone and the Ger will come back, because again, this Ger movement is not my own creation. It's prophesied like in every prophecy that exists. It's a major theme that the non-Jew, Rashi mentions in Kriya Shema, the non-Jew will start to utter the Shema under pure lips. The Ger will come back. All idolatry will go. Isaiah 56, which we read on Tisha B'Av, the non-Jews will become kosher Gerim. So this is not an unknown idea. And when the Zohar obviously had that in mind. Thus, and again, this is a massive revelation in halacha, and I got the privilege of teaching it because it's my industry, my field. A ger is 100% halachically not what you would call a goy. He's not a Jew, but he is not a traditional non-Jew. He is a new creation or an old creation that we've revisited called the ger. Any prohibition in learning or in service was for the akum, the idolater. Thus, the ger is free to observe 613 commandments. He need not convert unless he wants to, and he may learn any aspect of Torah that he wishes.
All right, we're at the end of part one of my conversation with Rabbi David Katz. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about Hasidim versus Vilna Gaon, a little bit more about the Kabbalah Center, and a couple other fun stuff on the other side. You're listening to Isn't Prophecy on IsraelNationalRadio.com or Root Sheva. The show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Any questions, comments, complaints, whatever, MessiahHour@gmail.com. We'll be back after this.